Yeshua said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he dies, he shall live. All right, let's set the scene. Yeshua is talking to Martha. Her brother Lazarus is dead. Not sick, not dying. Dead. They've already buried him. And Martha is grieving. She tells Yeshua, Master, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Think about that for a minute. She knows who he is. She knows he could have done something. And now she's standing there wondering why he didn't. I think a lot of us understand that feeling. Lord, if you had been here. If you had been here, maybe this wouldn't have happened. If you had been here, maybe I wouldn't have lost that person. If you had been here, maybe that relationship wouldn't have fallen apart. If you had been here, maybe I wouldn't be standing in this mess right now. Martha is standing in front of the same kind of questions that we sometimes carry. And then Yeshua says something that honestly is bigger than the situation she's asking about. I am the resurrection and the life. Now notice something. He doesn't say, I can perform a resurrection. And he doesn't say, I know how resurrection works. But Yeshua says, I am the resurrection and the life. Now that's a very different statement, folks. Martha is thinking about Lazarus. She's thinking about death. She's thinking about what has already happened. But Yeshua is pointing her towards himself. And there's something here that I reckon we can easily miss. Sometimes we want God to explain the situation when what he gives us is himself. We want answers. We want to know why something happened. We want to know how it's going to turn out. We want to see the whole road before we take the next pedal. But faith doesn't always work that way. It's like riding a bicycle down a road at night. You turn on your light and you can see a certain distance ahead of you. Maybe 50 feet, maybe 100. But you can't see the entire road. You can't see every turn or every hill. And you don't know what's waiting around the next bend. But you keep riding because you trust the light you have for the road that's immediately in front of you. And sometimes I think that's what walking with God looks like. We want the high beams, but God gives us enough light for the next stretch of road. And he says, keep going. Now let's keep reading. Because a little later, Yeshua goes to the tomb where Lazarus has been buried, and he calls Lazarus out of that tomb. The man who had been dead comes walking out. So when Yeshua says, I am the resurrection and the life, he's not giving Martha some abstract ideal to think about. He's about to demonstrate exactly what he's talking about. And yet, there's something even bigger happening here. Because Lazarus eventually died again. And that's an important detail. The miracle wasn't that Lazarus would never experience physical death again. The miracle pointed towards something greater. Yeshua wasn't simply saying, I can give somebody a few more years. He's talking about life that death itself cannot ultimately defeat. He who believes in me, though he dies, he shall live. That's the hope. And that's something we need to remember, because this world has a way of making death look like the end of the story. It isn't. For the believer, death is not the final chapter. And that changes the way we look at everything else. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat that. Death still hurts, grief is still real, and Martha still cried. Why, even Yeshua himself wept at Lazarus' tomb. So believing in resurrection doesn't mean we pretend that loss doesn't hurt. It means that our grief doesn't have to become hopelessness. There's a difference. You can cry and still have faith. You can hurt and still trust God. You can stand beside a grave and still believe that death doesn't get the final word. And I think that's one of the most important things about this verse. Yeshua doesn't tell Martha to stop grieving. He reminds her who he is. I am the resurrection and the life. Maybe you're going through something right now that feels like a dead end. Maybe something in your life has ended and you don't see how anything good can come from it. Maybe you're carrying grief. Maybe you're standing in front of something you prayed would never happen, asking, Lord, if you had been here. John 11:25 doesn't give us an explanation for every painful thing that happens. But it gives us something better. It gives us someone to hold on to. Yeshua says, I am the resurrection and the life. So don't confuse a closed chapter with the end of the story. Don't assume that because you can't see what God is doing, nothing is happening. And don't let what you see in front of you become bigger than the one who stands beside you. Keep puddling, keep praying, keep trusting, and keep your Bibles open. And when you can't see very far down the road, just take the next step, the next pedal stroke. You don't have to know every turn. You don't have to understand every circumstance. You just have to keep following Him. Because our hope isn't ultimately in having a life without trouble. Our hope is in the one who said, I am the resurrection and the life. So here's the takeaway for today. Death isn't the end. Loss isn't necessarily the end of the story. And whatever you're facing today, don't let the darkness convince you that God has disappeared. You may only be able to see the next few feet of road. That's okay. Turn on the light and keep pedaling. And trust the one who already knows what's around the bend. Thank you for joining me here this morning on this here Sunday morning, my family, my friends, and any of y'all out there who might be joining along and listening this morning. I hope everyone had a restful, relaxing, and rejuvenating Shabbat, and I hope to see you here again tomorrow to start off a new work week. And until then, Abba willing, Shalom, Shalom.